The Grand Palace of Buckingham stood tall against the grey London sky, its windows gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. Inside the ornate corridors, the royal security team moved with precision and purpose. Among them was Detective Inspector Marcus Hayes, a man whose sharp eyes missed nothing and whose loyalty to the crown was absolute. Marcus had been assigned to the Royal Protection Unit for nearly 15 years. He knew every corner of the palace, every secret passage, and every routine of the royal family. His job was to keep them safe, no matter the cost. Today felt different, though. There had been whispers of unusual activity, strange meetings, and mysterious visitors coming and going at odd hours. The Queen Consort Camilla had requested increased privacy lately, which struck Marcus as peculiar. She had always been open with the security team, understanding that their presence was necessary for her safety. But recently, she had been dismissing guards from certain areas of her private quarters, claiming she needed space for personal reflection. As Marcus walked through the palace halls, his radio crackled to life. "Inspector Hayes, we need you on the second floor. There's been a security breach in the West Wing." His heart raced as he quickened his pace. A security breach in the royal quarters was every protection officer's worst nightmare. He climbed the marble staircase 2 steps at a time, his mind racing through protocols and procedures. The West Wing housed several important rooms, including some of the Queen Consort's private chambers. As he reached the second floor, he could see other security personnel gathered near the ornate doors that led to Camilla's personal sitting room. Sergeant Williams, his trusted colleague, approached him with a concerned expression. "Sir, we detected movement in the restricted area during the scheduled quiet hours. The motion sensors were triggered, but when we checked the logs, no one was supposed to be in that section." Marcus frowned, studying the security reports on Williams' tablet. The readings showed clear signs of movement. But according to the official schedule, Camilla was supposed to be attending a charity luncheon in the city. Something was definitely wrong. "Have we confirmed the Queen Consort's location?" Marcus asked, his voice low and professional. "That's just it, sir. Her official car returned an hour ago, but she hasn't been seen by any of the staff. Her personal secretary assumed she was resting in her chambers." The pieces of the puzzle began forming in Marcus's mind. The unusual request for privacy, the mysterious schedule changes, and now this unexplained activity in her quarters. His instincts, honed by years of protecting the royal family, told him that something significant was happening behind those closed doors. As they discussed their next move, a soft sound echoed from within the room. It was barely audible, but Marcus's trained ears caught it immediately. It sounded like voices, hushed and intimate. His protective instincts kicked into high gear. If someone had somehow gained unauthorized access to the Queen Consort's private chambers, it could mean danger not just for her, but for the entire royal family. Marcus made a decision that would change everything. "We need to investigate immediately. The safety of the Queen Consort is our top priority." He approached the door, his hand moving instinctively to his radio. Whatever was happening inside that room, he was about to discover a secret that would shake the very foundations of everything he thought he knew about the woman he was sworn to. Protect the ornate handle of the door felt cold under his palm as he prepared to enter, not knowing that he was about to stumble upon a revelation that would challenge his understanding of duty, loyalty, and the complex human emotions that existed even within the walls of the most powerful monarchy in the world. Marcus turned the handle slowly, his training taking over as he prepared for any possible threat. The door opened silently on well-oiled hinges, revealing the elegant sitting room with its cream-colored walls and antique furniture. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the Persian carpet. What he saw next made him freeze in his tracks. Camilla stood near the window, but she wasn't alone. A man Marcus didn't recognize was with her, and they were standing much closer than protocol would ever allow. The man was tall with silver-gray hair, wearing an expensive suit that suggested wealth and sophistication. His hand was gently placed on Camilla's arm as they spoke in hushed tones. Marcus's mind raced. This was clearly not an official meeting. There was something deeply personal, almost intimate about their interaction. The way Camilla looked at this mysterious man, the gentle smile on her face, the relaxed posture of her shoulders. It was unlike anything Marcus had ever witnessed in his years of protecting her. For a moment, neither of them noticed his presence. Marcus stood frozen, torn between his duty to ensure the queen consort's safety and the growing realization that he was witnessing something extremely private. The man was speaking softly to Camilla, his voice carrying a warmth and familiarity that suggested this was not their first meeting. "I've missed you, my dear," the stranger said, his voice barely audible but full of emotion. "These secret meetings are the only thing that brings joy to my days now." Camilla's response shocked Marcus to his core. Her voice, usually so measured and royal in its tone, was soft and vulnerable. "I know, Thomas. I feel like I'm living two different lives. The world sees the queen consort, but with you, I can just be myself again. Thomas." Marcus quickly ran through his mental database of known associates, diplomats, and approved visitors. No Thomas appeared on any of the recent security clearance lists. This man was completely unknown to the Royal Protection Services, which meant he had somehow gained access to one of the most secure buildings in the world. The man Marcus now knew as Thomas moved closer to Camilla, taking her hands in his. "We can't keep doing this forever. Eventually someone will discover our meetings." As if his words had somehow summoned it into reality, Camilla suddenly turned and spotted Marcus standing in the doorway. Her face went completely pale, her eyes widening with shock and what appeared to be fear. The transformation was immediate. The relaxed, happy woman disappeared, replaced by the composed but clearly panicked queen consort. "Inspector Hayes," she said, her voice shaking slightly despite her attempt to maintain composure. This is..." Thomas turned as well, his expression shifting from tender affection to concern as he realized they had been discovered. He didn't seem surprised to see a security officer, which suggested he understood the risks they had been taking. His calm demeanor indicated this wasn't a man who was easily rattled, but Marcus could see the protective instinct in his eyes as he moved slightly in front of Camilla. The silence stretched between the three of them, heavy with unspoken implications. Marcus's training told him to secure the area and identify the potential threat, but his human instincts recognized something far more complex than a simple security breach. This wasn't an intruder or a dangerous situation. This was a deeply personal moment between two people who clearly cared about each other. Marcus found himself in an impossible position. His duty was clear: report any unauthorized presence in the royal quarters immediately. But the vulnerability in Camilla's eyes, the obvious fear of discovery, and the realization that he was looking at a woman who had found something precious and private in her very public life, made him hesitate. "Your Majesty," Marcus said carefully, his voice professional but not unkind, "I need to understand what's happening here." The next few moments would determine not just the fate of this secret relationship, but also test the boundaries of loyalty, duty, and human compassion within the walls of the most scrutinized royal residence in the world. Camilla took a deep breath, her royal training helping her regain some composure despite the shock of being discovered. She straightened her shoulders and looked directly at Marcus, though he could see the trembling in her hands. "Inspector Hayes, please close the door," she said quietly. "We need to talk." Marcus hesitated for a moment, then stepped fully into the room and closed the door behind him. He remained standing at attention, but his mind was working furiously to process what he was witnessing. Thomas remained protectively close to Camilla, his presence both comforting and concerning from a security perspective. "This is Thomas Whitmore," Camilla began, her voice gaining strength. "He's an old friend, a very dear friend from before my marriage to Charles." Thomas stepped forward slightly, extending his hand to Marcus in a gesture that was both polite and confident. "Inspector Hayes, I presume. I've heard Camilla speak of you often. She trusts you completely." Marcus shook the offered hand, noting the firm grip and the direct eye contact. Thomas Whitmore carried himself with the confidence of a man accustomed to respect, but there was also a gentleness in his manner that spoke of genuine care for Camilla. "Mr. Whitmore," Marcus replied professionally, "I need to inform you that you're in a restricted area without proper security clearance. I also need to understand how you gained access to this part of the palace." Camilla moved closer to Thomas, a gesture that spoke volumes about their relationship. "I arranged it," she admitted. "I used my private entrance and asked my personal staff to ensure we wouldn't be disturbed. I know it was wrong from a security perspective, but..." She paused, looking at Thomas with an expression that Marcus had never seen on her face before. It was tender, vulnerable, and deeply human. "Thomas and I knew each other 30 years ago. long before I became part of the royal family. We lost touch when life took us in different directions, but we found each other again 6 months ago. Thomas nodded, his eyes never leaving Camilla's face. I reached out through mutual friends after my wife passed away last year. I never expected to feel this way again at our age. The pieces began to fall into place for Marcus. This wasn't a casual affair or a security threat. This was two people who had found love again later in life, complicated by the impossible circumstances of Camilla's position as queen consort. "Your Majesty," Marcus said carefully, "you understand the implications of what you're telling me. My duty is to report any security breaches, and technically, I've compromised the security of the royal household," Camilla finished for him. "Yes, I understand that completely. But Marcus, I need you to understand something as well." She moved to one of the elegant chairs and sat down, suddenly looking older and more tired than Marcus had ever seen her. Thomas immediately moved to stand beside her chair, his hand gently touching her shoulder in a gesture of support. "For 15 years, I've lived my life in the public eye," Camilla continued. "Every moment scheduled, every word analyzed, every expression photographed. I've done my duty gladly, but I never expected to feel so empty inside." Thomas knelt beside her chair, taking her hand in both of his. "When we reconnected, it was like finding a piece of myself I thought I'd lost forever. We were young together once, we dreamed together, we laughed together. With Thomas, I'm not the queen consort or the duchess or any title at all. I'm just Camilla." Marcus watched this intimate exchange and felt something shift inside him. He had always seen his role as protecting the institution of the monarchy, but he was beginning to realize that sometimes protecting the people within that institution required different kinds of courage. "How long has this been going on?" Marcus asked, his tone softer now. 6 months, Thomas answered. "We meet here once a week, sometimes twice if Camilla's schedule allows. We talk, we remember, we share what our lives have become. Nothing inappropriate has happened if that's your concern. We're both adults who found comfort in each other's company." Camilla looked up at Marcus with pleading eyes. "I know I've put you in an impossible position. I know I've broken protocols and created a security risk. But Marcus, I'm 65 years old, and for the first time in years I feel truly happy when I'm with Thomas. Can you understand that?" Marcus stood there, realizing that his next decision would not just affect his career, but would determine the fate of a love story that had found its way back to life against all odds. Marcus found himself in the most challenging moment of his career. He had sworn an oath to protect the royal family, but he had never imagined that protection might sometimes mean protecting them from the consequences of their own humanity. He moved to the window and looked out at the palace gardens, gathering his thoughts. Behind him, Camilla and Thomas waited in anxious silence. The afternoon sun was beginning to set, casting golden light across the room that had become the setting for this life-changing revelation. "Tell me about your relationship," Marcus said, turning back to face them. "I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with here." Camilla and Thomas exchanged glances, and she nodded for him to speak first. "We met in 1975, Thomas began, settling into a chair across from Camilla. "I was working as a journalist for the Times, and Camilla was, well, she was the most beautiful, spirited woman I'd ever encountered. We were together for 2 years. What happened?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious now. Thomas smiled sadly. "Life happened. My career took me to foreign assignments, first to the Middle East, then to Asia. Camilla met Charles. We both understood that our paths were leading in different directions. We said goodbye, believing it was forever." Camilla picked up the story. "I married Charles, had my children, fulfilled my duties. Thomas married a wonderful woman named Sarah and had 2 children of his own. We lived completely separate lives for decades. Until last year," Thomas continued. "After Sarah passed away from cancer, I found myself thinking about the past more and more. A mutual friend mentioned that she still kept in touch with Camilla, and somehow we ended up exchanging letters." Marcus was surprised by the old-fashioned romance of it. "Letters?" Camilla smiled for the first time since he'd entered the room. "Proper handwritten letters. It felt like stepping back in time. We shared stories about our children, our losses, our regrets. It was healing. And then Thomas suggested we meet in person," Camilla continued. "Just once," he said. "Just to see each other again after all these years." "But once wasn't enough," Thomas admitted. "We discovered that despite everything that had changed, despite the years and the different lives we'd lived, There was still something between us. Something real and precious. Marcus studied both of their faces. He saw no deception, no manipulation, just two people who had found each other again in the autumn of their lives. But he also saw the enormous complications their relationship created. Your Majesty, you understand that if this becomes public, it would be a disaster. Camilla finished. Not just for me, but for the entire royal family. The media would have a field day. Charles would be humiliated. The monarchy itself could be damaged. Thomas leaned forward in his chair. Inspector, we're not naive. We know the risks. We know this can't go on forever. But we also know that we're not hurting anyone by simply caring about each other. Except yourselves, Marcus observed. This secret is clearly causing you both tremendous stress. Camilla nodded, tears beginning to form in her eyes. I lie awake at night sometimes, feeling guilty for being happy. How strange is that? I feel guilty for finding joy in my life. Thomas moved to kneel beside her chair again, taking her hands. We've talked about ending it. We've promised each other a dozen times that our last meeting would truly be our last. But then the time comes and neither of us can bear to say goodbye again. Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in his professional life, a deep sympathy for the people he was protecting. He had always seen the royal family as symbols, as institutions to be guarded. But sitting here with Camilla and Thomas, he saw them simply as human beings, struggling with the same needs for love and companionship that everyone faced. What exactly are you asking me to do? Marcus asked quietly. Camilla looked up at him with hope and fear mingled in her expression. I'm asking you to help us figure out how to handle this situation. You know palace security better than anyone. You know the protocols, the schedules, the blind spots. If there's a way for us to see each other safely without creating risks for anyone else, you would know it. Thomas added. We're not asking you to compromise your integrity or break your oath. We're asking you to help us find a solution that protects everyone involved, including the institution you serve. Marcus realized that his next words would determine not just their fate, but would define what kind of man he truly was. A rigid enforcer of rules, or someone who understood that sometimes true loyalty required wisdom, compassion, and creativity. Marcus walked to the door and checked that it was securely closed before returning to face Camilla and Thomas. The weight of the decision before him felt heavier than any he had made in his 15 years of royal service. Before I can even consider helping you, Marcus said, I need complete honesty about everything. How has Thomas been getting into the palace? Who else knows about your meetings? And what exactly is your long-term plan? Thomas straightened in his chair, meeting Marcus's gaze directly. I've been using the service entrance near the East Gardens. Camilla provides me with temporary staff credentials that get me past the first checkpoint. Her personal secretary, Mrs. Morrison, has been helping coordinate the timing. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. Mrs. Morrison knows? Camilla nodded reluctantly. She's worked for me for 8 years. She noticed the changes in my mood, the secret phone calls, the way I would light up when certain letters arrived. She confronted me about it 3 months ago. And she agreed to help? Marcus asked, surprised by the elderly secretary's willingness to bend rules. She said something I'll never forget, Camilla replied, her voice soft with emotion. She told me that she'd rather risk her job helping me find happiness than watch me slowly fade away from loneliness. Thomas reached for Camilla's hand. Mrs. Morrison lost her husband 5 years ago. She understands what it means to find unexpected companionship later in life. Marcus processed this information carefully. Having Mrs. Morrison involved actually made the situation more manageable from a security perspective, but it also meant more people were at risk if the secret was exposed. What about your long-term plans? Marcus pressed. You can't keep meeting in secret forever. The question hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Thomas and Camilla looked at each other with expressions that revealed they had wrestled with this question many times. We don't know, Camilla admitted finally. We've discussed it endlessly. Thomas has suggested that we should end things now before they become more complicated. But She paused, struggling with her emotions. I can't bear the thought of losing him again. The first time was hard enough, but we were young then. We had our whole lives ahead of us. Now at our age, this feels like our last chance for real happiness. Thomas squeezed her hand gently. I've told Camilla that I would be content with whatever time we can have together, even if it's just these secret meetings. But I also worry about the toll this secrecy is taking on her. Marcus studied both of them carefully. In his years of protection work, he had become skilled at reading people, at detecting deception and hidden motives. What he saw here was genuine love and genuine anguish. These were two people trapped by circumstances beyond their control. Your Majesty, have you considered discussing this situation with King Charles? Camilla's face went pale. Absolutely not. Charles has been nothing but kind to me throughout our marriage. But he doesn't need to know that his wife has found love with someone else. It would devastate him, and it would damage his position as monarch. But living with this secret is devastating you, Marcus observed. Thomas stood up and walked to the window, his shoulders tense with frustration. This is exactly why I keep telling Camilla we should end this. I never wanted to cause her pain or put her in an impossible situation. And this is why I keep telling Thomas that I'd rather have this pain than no joy at all, Camilla replied, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. Marcus felt his heart breaking for both of them. He had spent years protecting the royal family from external threats. But he was witnessing a different kind of danger, the slow destruction that came from denying fundamental human needs. After a long moment of silence, Marcus made his decision. I'm going to help you, he said quietly. Not because I'm abandoning my duty, but because I believe my duty includes protecting your well-being, not just your physical safety. Both Camilla and Thomas looked at him with a mixture of relief and disbelief. But, Marcus continued, we're going to do this properly. No more improvised security arrangements. No more taking dangerous risks. If we're going to make this work, we need a real plan that protects everyone involved. Camilla wiped her tears and looked at Marcus with gratitude that seemed to come from her soul. Inspector Hayes, I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me yet, Marcus replied with a slight smile. We have a lot of work to do, and what I'm about to propose is going to require courage from all of us. Over the next hour, Marcus outlined a comprehensive plan that would allow Camilla and Thomas to continue meeting while maintaining proper security protocols. His approach was methodical and professional, drawing on his years of experience in protecting the royal family. First, Marcus explained, we need to establish Thomas as a legitimate visitor. We'll create a cover story. He'll be registered as a historical consultant helping with palace archives. His background in journalism gives him the credibility to access historical documents. Thomas nodded approvingly. That's actually quite clever. I do have experience with historical research, and I've published several articles about British political history. This will give him regular, scheduled access to the palace, Marcus continued. Instead of sneaking in through service entrances, he'll enter through the main visitor's entrance with proper documentation and security clearance. Camilla looked amazed at the simplicity of the solution. But won't people ask questions about why I'm personally involved with a historical consultant? You'll be supervising his work on a special project about the history of royal charitable foundations, Marcus replied. It's perfectly reasonable for the Queen Consort to take personal interest in such research. Your meetings will be officially scheduled and logged, which actually makes them less suspicious than secret encounters. The plan was brilliant in its straightforward approach. By hiding in plain sight, they could transform their forbidden relationship into something that appeared completely proper and official. What about Mrs. Morrison? Thomas asked. Will she still need to be involved? Actually, her role becomes even more important, Marcus explained. She'll officially coordinate Thomas's research schedule with your calendar, Your Majesty. She'll also serve as a witness to ensure that everything remains appropriate and professional, at least on paper. Camilla smiled for the first time since Marcus had discovered them. So instead of feeling guilty about our secret meetings, we'll have official appointments to look forward to. Exactly, Marcus confirmed. But this plan only works if you both commit to certain boundaries. The meetings must always take place in semi-public areas of the palace, the library, the portrait gallery, the historical archives. Never again in your private chambers. Thomas and Camilla exchanged glances, and Marcus could see them weighing the trade-off between privacy and security. We understand, Thomas said finally. The risk of discovery in your private rooms was too great anyway. Being able to see each other regularly, even in more formal settings, is better than these anxious secret encounters. Marcus spent another 30 minutes working out the details, scheduling procedures, security protocols, and contingency plans if questions arose about Thomas's frequent visits. As they talked, he watched Camilla transform from the frightened, guilty woman he had discovered into someone who seemed lighter and more hopeful. "There's one more thing we need to discuss," Marcus said as their planning session drew to a close. "What happens if your relationship deepens? What if you want more than these supervised visits?" The question hung in the air, touching on the fundamental impossibility of their situation. Camilla was married to the King of England. There was no scenario in which she could publicly acknowledge a romantic relationship with another man. Thomas was the first to speak. "Inspector Hayes, we've talked about this many times. We both understand that what we have can never become more than it is right now. We're not naive teenagers dreaming of running away together. We're adults who are grateful for whatever happiness we can find within the constraints of reality." Camilla nodded, though Marcus could see the sadness in her eyes. "I made vows when I married Charles. I won't break them, even if my heart wishes things could be different. What Thomas and I share is precious exactly because it asks nothing of the future. It exists only in these moments we steal together." Marcus found their acceptance both admirable and heartbreaking. They had found love again, but they were also mature enough to understand its limitations. In some ways, their willingness to accept these boundaries made their relationship more poignant, not less. "Your Majesty, Mr. Whitmore," Marcus said formally, "I want you to know that what I'm doing goes beyond my official duties. I'm doing this because I believe everyone deserves some measure of happiness in their lives, even those who serve the crown." Camilla stood and walked over to Marcus, placing her hand gently on his arm. "Inspector Hayes, you've given us the greatest gift imaginable, the chance to love each other without living in constant fear. I will never forget your kindness." Thomas joined them, extending his hand once again to Marcus. "Inspector, I want you to know that I would never do anything to harm Camilla or damage the institution she serves. My feelings for her include deep respect for her position and responsibilities." As they shook hands, Marcus realized that he had just become part of one of the most unusual love stories he could have imagined, a romance that would be conducted in the halls of Buckingham Palace under the cover of historical research, supervised by a loyal protection officer, who understood that sometimes the greatest act of service was simply allowing people to be human. 6 months later, the plan had worked beyond anyone's expectations. Thomas Whitmore had become a familiar and respected figure at Buckingham Palace, known to staff as the distinguished historian, researching the evolution of royal charitable works. His twice-weekly visits were so routine that security guards greeted him by name, and even other members of the royal household had grown accustomed to seeing him in the palace archives and library. Marcus watched from a distance as Camilla and Thomas worked together in the elegant library, surrounded by leather-bound volumes and historical documents. To any observer, they appeared to be engaged in serious scholarly discussion. Only Marcus could see the subtle signs of their deeper connection, the way Thomas's eyes lit up when Camilla entered the room, the gentle smile that crossed her face when she heard his voice, the careful way their hands would brush when exchanging documents. The transformation in Camilla had been remarkable. The anxious, guilt-ridden woman Marcus had discovered 6 months ago had been replaced by someone who seemed more vibrant and engaged with life. Her public appearances had taken on a new warmth, and even King Charles had commented to staff about how happy and energetic his wife seemed lately. Mrs. Morrison had proven invaluable to the arrangement. Her official role as coordinator allowed her to ensure that Camilla and Thomas always had adequate time together, while maintaining the appearance of proper supervision. She had also become a trusted confidant to both of them, offering wisdom and support during the more difficult moments. On this particular afternoon, Marcus was conducting his regular security check when he overheard a conversation that made him pause outside the library door. "I've been thinking about what you said last week," Camilla was saying softly, "about finding peace with our situation." Thomas's voice was equally quiet. "And what conclusion have you reached?" "That loving you, even within these constraints, has made me a better person. I'm more patient with others, more understanding of human frailty, more grateful for small kindnesses. If this is all we can have, then I'm grateful for it." Marcus smiled to himself. The woman who had once felt guilty for being happy had learned to embrace joy without apology. "I feel the same way," Thomas replied. "These afternoons with you have given meaning to my days in a way I never expected at this stage of life. I no longer regret the path that led us apart all those years ago, because it ultimately led us back to each other." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of King Charles, who had begun occasionally dropping by to check on the research project. Marcus straightened immediately, but he had grown comfortable with these impromptu visits. Charles seemed genuinely interested in Thomas's work and had even contributed some family stories and documents to the research. "How is the project progressing?" Charles asked warmly, settling into one of the library chairs. Thomas looked up from his notes with genuine enthusiasm. "Remarkably well, Your Majesty. The documentation of royal charitable initiatives over the past century is quite extensive. Her Majesty has provided invaluable insights into the personal motivations behind many of the programs." Charles smiled at his wife with obvious affection. "Camilla has always had a gift for understanding what motivates people to help others. I'm not surprised she's been helpful to your research." Marcus watched this interaction with fascination. Charles genuinely liked and respected Thomas, completely unaware of the deeper connection between the historian and his wife. In some strange way, the three of them had found a balance that worked for everyone involved. As Charles left to attend to other duties, Marcus noticed Camilla and Thomas exchange a look that contained both love and a kind of peaceful acceptance. They had learned to find contentment in what they could have rather than mourning what they couldn't. Later that evening, as Marcus completed his security reports, he reflected on the unusual situation he had helped create and maintain. By conventional standards, he should have reported the security breach and ended their relationship before it could develop. Instead, he had found a way to protect not just their physical safety, but their emotional well-being as well. His radio crackled with routine communications from other security personnel. The palace was settling into its evening rhythm, another day of protecting the royal family coming to a close. But Marcus knew that his protection had extended far beyond physical security. He had protected something more precious and fragile, the human capacity for love and connection, even under the most impossible circumstances. As he walked through the quiet corridors of Buckingham Palace, Marcus carried with him the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the greatest service one could provide was simply understanding that everyone, regardless of their position or responsibilities, deserved the chance to be truly happy. In helping Camilla and Thomas find a way to love each other, within the constraints of duty and loyalty, he had discovered that true protection sometimes meant protecting people's hearts as much as their lives. The secret would remain safe. The love would continue to flourish in the spaces between official duties, and Marcus would continue to stand guard, not just over the institution of the monarchy, but over the very human hearts that served within it.